In the late 18th century, Europe was a powder keg. Ignited by the flames of the French Revolution, old monarchies trembled, and from the chaos and blood, a figure rose who was destined to change the continent forever. This is the story of how a young Corsican artillery officer became an emperor, brought nations to their knees, and almost conquered Europe. This is the story of Napoleon Bonaparte. Napoleon's rise to power was meteoric. After distinguishing himself as a brilliant tactician at the Siege of Turin, he quickly rose through the ranks. But it was his first Italian campaign in 1796 that truly announced his military genius to the world. With a small, poorly equipped army, he crushed the superior forces of Austria and its allies, using speed, surprise, and the ability to concentrate his forces at the decisive point. He wasn't just winning battles, he was rewriting the rules of war. In 1799, returning from his Egyptian campaign, Napoleon staged a coup d'etat and became the first consul of France. He brought stability to a nation ravaged by years of revolutionary chaos. He implemented reforms, creating the Napoleonic Code, a civil code that still forms the basis of legal systems in many countries today. But his ambition stretched far beyond the borders of France. In 1804, he crowned himself Emperor of the French, and his gaze turned to the rest of Europe. The Napoleonic Wars began. The Grande Army, Napoleon's creation, was the most advanced military machine of its time. He reorganized the army into flexible corps that could operate independently or as part of the main force. He masterfully combined infantry, cavalry, and artillery, turning battle into a deadly symphony. His tactics were based on decisive offense, aiming not just to push the enemy back, but to completely annihilate their army in a single, decisive battle. The pinnacle of his generalship came at the Battle of Austerlitz in 1805. Known as the Battle of the Three Emperors, he faced the combined forces of the Austrian and Russian emperors. Napoleon, feigning weakness on his right flank, lured the Allies into a trap. As they attacked, he launched a devastating blow against their weakened center, splitting the enemy army in two and routing them. The victory was a masterpiece of tactics and deception that solidified his reputation as invincible. After Austerlitz, Napoleon redrew the map of Europe. He dissolved the 1,000-year-old Holy Roman Empire, creating the Confederation of the Rhine under his protection. He crushed Prussia at the battles of Jena and Auerstedt, and then defeated the Russians again at Friedland by 1807. Most of continental Europe was either under his direct control or allied with him. His brothers and marshals sat on the thrones of Spain, Naples, and Westphalia. It seemed nothing could stop him to crush his last and most stubborn enemy, Great Britain. Napoleon implemented the continental system and economic war that forbade trade with the British. But this policy would become one of his greatest blunders. It damaged the economies of many European nations, causing resentment and smuggling to force Portugal to join the blockade. Napoleon invaded Spain in 1808. The decision proved fatal. The Spanish people rose up in a brutal guerrilla war, which they called the Little War. This war became a bleeding ulcer for the French Empire, consuming hundreds of thousands of soldiers and vast resources. The Peninsular War demonstrated that Napoleon's armies could be beaten, but not an entire nation fighting for its freedom, despite the difficulties in Spain. Napoleon was still the master of Europe, but his drive for total control led him to his next, even more catastrophic mistake in 1812, to punish Russia for violating the continental system. Napoleon assembled the largest army Europe had ever seen, over 600,000 men, and invaded the vast Russian plains. The Russian campaign was the beginning of the end. The Russian army, under the command of Kutuzov, avoided a decisive battle, retreating deep into the country and employing a scorched earth policy. The Grande Army suffered from starvation, disease, and constant partisan attacks. The Battle of Borodino, though a tactical victory for the French, was a Pyrrhic one, costing them immense casualties. Napoleon entered Moscow, only to find a burned and empty city. After waiting in vain for a peace offer from Tsar Alexander I, he was forced to begin a disastrous retreat. The Grande Army was almost completely annihilated by the harsh Russian winter and relentless attacks. The disaster in Russia inspired Napoleon's enemies, all of Europe, Prussia, Austria. Sweden united against him. In 1813, at the Battle of the Nations in Leipzig, Napoleon suffered a crushing defeat. In 1814, the Allies entered Paris. Napoleon was forced to abdicate and was exiled to the island of Elba. But his story was not over. In 1815, he made a daring escape from Elba, landed in France, and, gathering an army, seized power again for 100 days. Europe united against him once more. On June 18, 1815, at the Belgian village of Waterloo, Napoleon fought his final battle in a fierce engagement. His army was decisively defeated by the combined forces of the British under the Duke of Wellington and the Prussians under Blücher. This time, the Allies took no chances. Napoleon was exiled to the remote island of St. Helena in the Atlantic Ocean, where he died in 1821. His dream of a united Europe under French rule was shattered, but his legacy endured. He was a military genius who changed the art of war. His legal code laid the foundations for modern European law. He was a tyrant and a reformer, a man who nearly conquered a continent, but ultimately fell victim to his own boundless ambition.